we're gonna need this, and actually this is like the second time I've tried to record this video because the first time was way too rambly and I did not get my thoughts down as much. I've tried to write them down more, but like who knows. So if you see me looking down a lot, that's because I'm like trying to look at how I made any sort of thought process with this. Editing OB here. Everything I'm about to talk about are allegations. Nobody has been charged with anything, and all of this stuff is just my own opinions. So please take everything I'm saying as just opinions and do your own research on the couple of different instances I am talking about. I want to talk about the internet and just what it's been like being a Gen Zer on the internet. And believe me, I love the internet. I would not be doing YouTube if I did not love the internet. Sorry about that, my light went out as I just started this. But yes, I do love the internet. It also makes my job a lot easier, so easier to find papers, easier to double check my thought process as I like look up old notes from different professors. But like also the internet and like internet communities are weird. And my credentials is I've been on the internet for a long time. I think, God, some of the first YouTube videos I remember watching were things like Potter Puppet Pals, which my mom really hated and did not want me on YouTube after that. All of the spirit spots that the Naval Academy made, again, around the same time as like Potter Puppet Pals. So this would have been about 2007 when I was watching this, which was like YouTube had been around for maybe 2 years at that point. And like there was things like the Duck Song and Gummy Bear and like Charlie the Unicorn. And most of this is YouTube because YouTube for me, and I think a lot of like people my age, that was where we really found a sense of community. Maybe it's also just the fact that I am chronically online. Like I will recount to my friends stuff that had happened on the internet and I will think it is like usual, but then it's like, nope, no, I'm just chronically online. I remember all of the things that happened with YouTubers, although like one of the times I was like, you really don't know about this scandal? And the friend was like, really? And I'm like, this was huge. It was one of the Dramageddons. Yeah. Also, I wanted to add in the fact that like I've been chronically online. I have seen many YouTubers rise, I've seen them fall, I've seen fandoms rise and fandoms fall. The fact that I was actively watching beauty gurus during Dramageddon by Sisters or Dramageddon 2, and then also I was watching Carmageddon. Granted, also with Carmageddon, it was the pandemic. Like there was nothing else to watch, but that has been how chronically online, and it's the fact that there's so many that I do keep at an arm's length because I remember all of the stuff that Gabby Hanna has done. And as somebody pointed out, I think again, it was on the Do We Know Them podcast, which I do know is biased against Gabby Hanna, but also for good reason because Gabby Hanna has done horrible things to Jesse. But also, Gabby tried to sell the story about Tana. That was a thing. And also, I want to kind of put into context. So I am 26. You want to know who else is the same age as me who are like relatively big names? Like Swell Entertainment, Amanda. She is also 26. Tana Mojo and Mr. Beast. Like if we had all been in the same location, we could have been in the same like first grade class. So kind of putting it into consideration with that, like we have been on the internet for most of our lives. It is so easy for us now to have our careers on the internet. The fact that like Tana started at like 14, 15. I don't really know the history of Tana Mongeau much. I just remember periodically seeing the controversies that she got into. That is really all that I knew about her until more recently. I had not been keeping up with her much. We can have careers that are online. I don't. I'm a grad student who is then gonna probably work in industry or like, I don't know, some government agency. We're not going to talk about that. That's going to be a different video. We have been on the internet for a long time, and I remember the older days of YouTube where we had those like viral videos. Again, I was naming off a couple of those. Everybody was showing the other kids in school Charlie the Unicorn. I was at a like friend's house and her older brothers were showing us that, and the Gummy Bear song. And like there was things like Gangnam Style. That was a big one. And when like YouTube Rewind was actually good and relevant to what was going on, like when it was again the Gangnam Style, or the next year when it was what did the Fox say? In some of those ways I do miss it because the internet was so much smaller. You still had all of these enormous communities. Like I think of the fan culture. That was kind of when I think of the heyday of like Tumblr with Super Hulock, or Rise of the Tangled Brave, like, or How to Train Your Dragons, Brave, Tangled, and Rise of the Guardians. I do not remember what that was called. Like they had a whole thing. I'll find some stuff about it. It's the big four. Then you added Anna and Elsa, and everything got even more crazy. I think it was Strange Ants. Somebody made a video about it a while back, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember those days.
I was such a fangirl for Jack Frost back in the day.
Yeah, I come from that era of the internet, and it was just all of these like different communities, but it was so much smaller. And nowadays it's much more spread out. But also I think of how crazy a lot of it was, and it could get pretty dark. Like the fact that there was always those jokes about a very specific adult film. Like also the fact that there's the comment about like parental control and like parents watching their kids on the internet. But that was a weirdly spaced out thing. Especially once, again, we got into more of the YouTube space and there was just like the different communities, because like the parents knew about like instant messengers and other kind of like chat rooms, but by the time a lot of Gen Z was on the internet, it was a lot more of the social media. Like it was early days of Facebook for the general public. A lot of kids in my middle school had Facebook. I was not allowed to have it because again, my mother was strict on certain things, but then not strict on others. Not probably because she didn't know, since I ended up on DeviantArt. Whew, that was questionable. And for those who remember DeviantArt, yes, I found some of the weird stuff of Disney princes. And also, like the first ever spicy fic I read was a freaking Beatles Who Chooses, or like not Who Chooses, it was a freaking Beatles Wide Shoes, where they could not stop using the term like velvet steel. I think that was what it was. It was something where you're like, oh, but I was like, yeah, that was on the internet, just there for me to come across. And like, I'm not gonna say the Aslan don't cite the deep magic to me, but my God, have I been around for stuff. I have seen things rise and fall. I have seen all, like the fact that it was Sherlock and Doctor Who and Supernatural, and I mean Doctor Who is still around, but this was in the age of like Tennant and Smith. But yeah, I think about that, and then I think of those communities and like weird stuff we found, and like millennials always talk about like, oh, it was so crazy back then. I'm like, it was still crazy in the late 2000s, 2010s, and that was y'all putting that on the internet. That was not like some other people. That was y'all doing that. I was consuming the stuff that y'all put out on the internet. Like, can we talk about the fact that Star Kids had a musical called My Dick and Me? Like that, yeah, that was something that like you found if you were also wanting to watch Harry Potter musical. Yeah, we saw some weird stuff. And I think also one of the big things that happened really strongly, and we keep on seeing this with
like 20-something-year-olds especially, is that we realize about the parasocial relationships we've had with these other people on social media, specifically in YouTube, because again, so many of them we started watching as like kids.
Jumping in because I wanted to talk a little bit more about the parasocial relationships, because it doesn't always have to be in terms of like the grooming instances. It can be also just the fact that like, oh, how dare you speak bad of my fave. I still have to remind myself that like I am not here to defend people like John Green, Hank Green. Do I love a lot of their content? Does it, like, their work really have resonated with me for years? And like the fact that I have watched them since I was like 14, and I really grew up and became a person while like involved with the nerd fight area, because that was really a lot of the like developmental periods for me, going through like high school and college, yes, but like also I don't know them. I don't, and I have to remind myself of that, and like think about that when like Hank had announced that he was diagnosed with cancer. I was so distraught, and it's like I can be sad, but also I don't know him in that sense. Like, he's not my friend. Would it be funny to have him or John show up to my defense? Yes. And I will invite them, because why not? I think about that with like the parasocial relationships. It doesn't have to be that like the instances of, oh, I'm so obsessed with this fan, or not obsessed with this fan, I'm so obsessed with this YouTuber, but like, yeah, they're the person that I really like. Yeah, it's like, you don't have to be obsessed with them. It's just like, oh yeah, this has been a person I have watched for years. They're just part of my whole growing up experience. So it's a big thing, especially when you have spent most of your life in internet communities, that we just keep on having to remind myself about.
The big one I think about right now has been Tana and Cody Go, because Tana was a fan. She was a huge fan. She'd said she'd been a fan for a long time, and she was a fan of a bunch of these YouTubers that she had been working with. Like when she'd been with hanging out with Shane, she had been a fan of his. And like, I can totally see that, because I used to watch Shane when I was like 14 also. Like, that was the stuff that we were all watching. And so we didn't know these boundaries. And I mean, the YouTubers didn't know these boundaries. Should they have? Yes, because they were having these close relationships with kids. I mean, that was the thing with Colleen, and I am now blanking on his name, even though Adam McIntyre, because he was a child and she was an adult. Like, there was this blurred line, especially with YouTube. And while like millennials joke about the creepy people they met in the like chat rooms, we were meeting the creepy people on social media platforms that we knew their faces, and they knew we were kids. They had so much more power. And like, the first time I remember hearing about something like this was, I think it was 2014, when Alex Day, Sam Pepper, and a couple of other British YouTubers specifically were all getting called out for coercing fans into relationships. I specifically remember Alex Day being part of this because I was a fan of his. I loved his music. I loved watching him and Charlie, and it was just this whole little community. Like, I loved watching Carrie Hope Fletcher, who was his girlfriend at the time, and the fact that like Alex Day had used his influence as this like YouTuber. And this was before, like, this was while YouTube was starting to become more mainstream. People were starting to kind of like pay attention. The Fault in Our Stars had come out as a movie by that point, like, and so everybody was familiar with John Green.
And therefore people knew about Hank Green and DFTBA Records, which Alex Day was signed to.
And so like, even that corner of the internet was a lot bigger. Yeah. And he had used his influence to kind of coerce these girls, maybe they were women, if they were over the age of like consent, but they were still these fans who didn't have that same power in the relationship. Like, if I had been 16 meeting Alex Day, I may have fallen for the same thing, and I probably would have felt pressured into it because I was such a huge fan, and it would feel like such a like cool thing to do to be able to hang out with him, and like because I listened to his music and all that. With Tana, I very much can see how she fell victim to the same situation. The fact that she had been a fan of his, and the fact that Tana was in a vulnerable situation. She did not seem to have any adults looking out for her. Like, from what I've understood, her parents are not involved at all. By the time all of this happened, she'd been emancipated, so there wasn't really adults in her corner in that sense. And the like rest of the community that was around her failed her, took advantage of her because, and she was a kid, like she was 17. Even if she'd been 18 during any of this, she was being taken advantage of because she did not have those same sort of life experiences to look back on. And like she talks about that now, and it's really obvious that like this was happening. It stuck with me because, like, again, we think of Onision really instilling this parasocial relationship with so many of his fans, and like the fact that I think all of his partners have been fans of his at some point. It just really sticks out to me that like using the older age and the fact that they were a fan to really kind of like push what they want.
Similar situations occurred with traditional celebrities, but there aren't as many traditional celebrities to make it so noticeable.
It just has been sticking out for me. And like I remember, because with Alex Day, it was a huge thing that had rocked Nerdfighteria, but it seems to have been an isolated situation because we keep on relearning the fact that what happened with Tana was in 2016, and she had this parasocial relationship really with a lot of the like YouTubers that she liked, that she was meeting at Playlist Live. That's been kind of on my thoughts about being on the internet. It is a weird place, and I have seen it change so much in the like 10 years, 15 years that I really have been paying attention to it, and with these online communities, because while I have friends in real life, I have always very much appreciated being on these online spaces. Honestly, I sometimes find it weird when I run into people in my real life who also were in these spaces. I hope all of this makes sense. It's going to be interesting to edit this. So thank y'all for watching. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!